Welcome back to another episode of Mindful Drawing. I'm Rooks is Fun, and we'll go on a little adventure into our meditative practice through the acts of drawing by exploring an endless, infinite world of bundling strands, winding their way through space and coming up to meet us at that interface with the paper as we guide and witness the action of our pen or pencil, letting our creativity flow out from an internal space of relaxation and attention to that external space of whatever emerges on the piece of paper. And now that we've taken care of the cat and its whimsical needs, we can jump right into a warm-up to help us explore this infinite bundling idea. Grab a pad of paper, pen, a pencil, anything you like to draw with, and let's draw together. Alright, so because this one will be an experiment, we'll do a little warm-up on a scratch piece of paper. With something that I was talking about with some students the other day, and it had to do with some structural properties of trying to use light things to make strong stuff, and thought a lot about plants, and thought we could look at a little bit of bundling of kind of cells or simple shapes. So something like the circle being easy, or a soft square, something that can begin to collect into a cluster. Maybe that's a kind of radial pattern where things organize around a center. Or it could be a more randomized or unevenly distributed pattern. We'll use the warm-up just to play a little bit with kind of making these clumps of circles, whatever kind of shape, just to fill in the gaps and make that bundle of, or what I see in thinking the way as kind of an architect does, a section through something, like a cut through a plant, looking at its cells, or cut through a cable. But it's also just a collection of circles, one there reaching out in the radial fashion, and maybe trying one where things clump up just wherever the opportunity arises, fitting kind of the neatest next to the neighbor. They may end up looking similar or quite different, and playing a bit with size, again letting our eyes see what is taking place in the local context around where we're operating. So if there's a small space, we can rapidly adapt and create a small circle, or when there's more freedom in the space, we can expand, drawing what feels in rhythm and comfortable with the space there on the page. And then continuing to play and explore there, we'll just do a few breathing and alignment exercises before moving into the larger exercise. So as I draw my next cluster on each circle, I'll take a deep breath in and expand north and south, east and west, up and down, and let it out, and then do it again and just begin drawing the circles with each breath, orbiting with the breath, or going very slow to complete one revolution, finding where your rhythm with this might be today. Is the pen moving quick and in repetitions, or with clear, guided patience? Both offer us an interface to that breathing, the filling of the body with oxygen, and the connection with how that rhythm can work its way out through the medium, guiding our attention to the practice and the creative expression at hand, and bringing us into some synchronization between our movements, both internal to the core and at our extremities here at the fingers. A few more breaths, a few more strands added to the bundle. And then we can transition or keep working with this page, depending on how you feel. I like the warm-ups just to get all the kinks out, be ready to start playing in this new space. And picking up with that rhythm in the breath, while it is for a time in our focus and attention, as we guide the in-breath and the relocation of the pen or pencil on the paper, finding new locations for making these marks into the empty territory of the page. We can let that attention to the guidance, the breathing in and the breathing out, shift from the foreground to more of a background, a witnessing of that rhythm persisting as we train over time or just in that short moment to have that alignment. And it may drift again out of sync as we draw, as things pull us in to what we're looking at, as our hands or body get tired in any position. And we can always come back and resynchronize it throughout the exercise. And what I'm going to look at doing for myself, just like the warm-up, is to start creating several bundles around, but you can work on one ever-expanding cluster of the little strand cuts, or make small, short, fast clumpings scattered around the page. If the idea of strands or bundles brings a visual metaphor or an idea into your vision in your mind, you may consider aligning the two, practicing some of that mindful inner looking. What things do we relate to? As I mentioned, I think of plants or the cells clumping around. Maybe it's hairs or soap bubbles, other things that pack together in these flexible little circles. And when you begin the next cluster or even the next circle, we can start taking our attention deeper into the process of making those marks on the page to really extract and see, feel, hear how the pen or pencil interacts with the paper, the vibrations on the fingertips that change if we move fast or slow, clockwise or counterclockwise, each offering a subtly different interface to the medium. Each one in that nuanced change an opportunity in the practice to hone our awareness to that physical engagement with the act of creating, to spend some time out of our mind and in the space of our body, extended out through this instrument, the pen or pencil, through this medium, the paper, texture, smoothness, friction, all transmitted through the many refined nerve endings in our fingertips. Perhaps if it's a quiet space, you can even hear the light scratch the mediums together using a rougher paper, little pops and crinkles as the pen moves over, really letting the finer, more subtle environmental conditions let our mind find new focus, new attention to those small details as we can let the eye and hand track the technique without our heavy conscious intervention now that it's practiced a few times. And those other new conditions to observe draw us in further to our space here of creating together, of mapping territories on the paper, of continuing to refine our alignment to one of our mediums of play and expression. And with the fingers and the touch, the ears, perhaps even the sense of smell could come into play if working with a pen or marker that has a significant off-gassing. Those more subtle, ever-present, and actively processing our environment senses in the background, keeping us connected and safe, but sometimes we become unaware of their function, giving them a little foreground. We can then shift to the eyes, often one of our primary guiding senses, since it's such a direct interface with the tangible things in front of us. And can you track the eye's focus to the tip of the pen or pencil, perhaps slowing down the motion of the drawing, really letting the eyes absorb what details you can see. I'm at enough of a distance that my eye wants to scatter and wander a little bit, as there's so many fine lines and that very small tip of the pen interacting with the page, and taking the opportunity to exercise that patience with the eye, practicing its focus, accepting its normal, mechanical, and nervous conditions to dart around, to constantly take in snapshots of the environment in front of us and add them into the processing queue for assembling our representation of the world outside. But for just a few moments, we can slow all of that down to just that interaction between the tip of the pen or pencil to the interface where it meets the paper and deposits whatever medium that expresses these marks. And with that deep attention, we may also find a tensioning, a will to look in, to keep things on track. And we can bring our breath back in to make sure we're not holding too tight to that focus. We want to let the eye grip the tip of the pencil loosely but firmly, with intention and purpose, but without overdoing it. Breathing in and letting it float out through the creation of the next strand. And all of those sensory perceptions begin to blend back together with the mixing of the breath. Begin to paint for our mind its whole engagement with what is outside here. And if you have several bundles going, perhaps just one large, you might transition out and begin to look at the space between them. Take advantage of a place of practice and relaxation. And what I see and think might be interesting is to begin to take some of these bundles out into the space of the page, just picking from an intersection at the perimeter and extending a line or curve somewhere out into the void between. Some might wrap, collide, overlap, or even connect to the neighbor. Thinking of these as hairs or fibers extending into space. Wrapping their way around. Sharing shapes and edges for a while, and then looping off into their own conditions. The bundle, perhaps just a moment in time. A few strands cooperating into a form, and others winding their way off to create new conditions. New clusters colliding together here in the paper. Beginning to form a network that links, crosses over, bypasses and combines, stretches works its way into something larger, more complex. But still tied together at the base with these strands of kind of flowing, threaded conditions, linking together the space of the page. And if in this time you've begun to find a technique for linking between bundles, or continue just mapping new clusters, growing this single cluster, wherever you find some space of kind of connection and relaxation in the drawing, just to see where it goes. Spend 5 minutes or so in that free space of exploring what's emerged through the practice, looking for opportunity, reading and writing simultaneously into this page. In the last couple of minutes we have, I think you can continue drawing and also give yourself some space to meditate on and think about the vastness that can emerge in just a short amount of time, moving a pen around a piece of paper with a little bit of technique, perhaps some influence of imagination, or even just letting whatever the mind sees and interprets flow outwards. One shape, one line or curve, one twist or fold, following the next, beginning to fill space, beginning to suggest seeing new things, not necessarily knowing where it will go or even seeing what it might be, but just following the guidance of the breath and the repetition to some place of inspiration. Quote I often give to students, I think attributed to Frank Tybalt, is something along the lines of making things rarely follows inspiration, but inspiration almost always follows making something. And so sometimes we just start and play and make a lot of little strange moves, things that don't always line up or make sense at first, and then we refine, repeat, practice, refine, and maybe once in a while get a fun idea and follow it through those further steps of implementation. Or whatever we make, even if it's not exciting to our eye, frustrating, not what we want it to be, or just ugly, strange, who knows. It was just a few moments of a practice. We got some breathing, some extension of our oxygen, and a little flexing of our fingers. And speaking of flexing the fingers, good to take a step back and give them a little roll. Flex them in together and let them expand and relax. I like to roll them from both directions. They've been working hard or sitting still and creaking a little. And that lets us start to come back into our space to feel all the things that have drifted to the background, come back into our foreground so they're ready to act and engage with the world and have a nice morning. The drawing that emerged today left me with that feeling of there's something there that I just want to keep exploring. I see the completion of what has emerged through a less intentional act into something that I can now apply kind of layers of my imagination and creativity to. And if that happens while you're working on these exercises, and I hope you have some time to continue to explore them. But if all you have is 20 or 30 minutes in the morning to start the day and ignite that creativity, or kind of wind down in the evening and enter a place of relaxation and let out the flow of all the energies from the day onto the page, then take that piece of paper, file it away, crumple it up, throw it out and recycle it, or bring it back in a few days with fresh eyes and see what you might have discovered in this time together. Thank you for joining along in this practice. If you're a regular watcher, listener, observer, and please let me know in the comments down below what you think of these exercises and what stands out to you, or even share images of what you've created at Rooksisfun on Instagram. Give the video a thumbs up if you like it, and share it with your friends. I hope everyone has a wonderful week, and draw well.